Morning I got up early like always. Megan was still asleep upstairs after the party. I had my usual Saturday routine. Wash both cars, top off the tanks. I made coffee and went out to the driveway. Her Audi sat there in the morning light. I opened the passenger door first. There was a water bottle on the floor mat. And right away something was off. The passenger seat was pushed all the way back, as far as it would go. Megan is 5'6", and whoever had been sitting there was a lot taller than she was. I tried to walk it back. Maybe a co-worker rode with her. I leaned in for the water bottle, and my fingers brushed something on the floor mat next to it. A cufflink, solid gold, with 2 letters engraved on the face. VS. I stood there with it in my hand and didn't move. I knew exactly one man with those initials. Vance Sterling, her boss, the CEO. I stood there in the driveway with the cufflink in my hand and needed to think. I put it in my pocket and slid behind the wheel of her car. The dashboard lit up as soon as I pressed the start button. Her phone must have still been paired because the head unit picked up the connection on its own and the navigation screen came alive showing the last trip. The Panorama Towers. Arrival at 2:15 a.m. I read it twice. The party was at the Hartwell flagship restaurant downtown, and the Panorama Towers were in the other direction, about 15 minutes from there. There was no reason to go there from the restaurant, not on the way home and not on the way to anywhere else. And 2:15 in the morning meant she'd come into the house a little after 2:30. I sat with that for a minute, and then I looked down at the center console. There was a glossy slip of paper next to the cup holder. I picked it up. A visitor parking pass for the underground garage at the Panorama Towers, printed at the security desk, time-stamped at the top. And at the bottom, on a sticker from the guard's printer, 4 words. Guest of Apt 352. She didn't drop someone off at the lobby. She drove into the garage and parked in a guest spot at 2 in the morning, cleared as a guest of apartment 352. I sat in the car for a while longer, then got out and went back into the house. Megan was still asleep upstairs. I made another cup of coffee and sat down at the kitchen table with my laptop. Hartwell Hospitality had been posting all morning. The marketing team had already uploaded the first batch of photos from the anniversary party, and the company page on social media was full of them. I scrolled through, slow, looking at every shot. There was a photo of Vance Sterling raising a glass at the head table. I zoomed in. On his cuff, plain as anything, was the matching cufflink. Same gold, same engraving, same VS. I kept scrolling. 3 photos later I found her. It was a wider shot of the dance floor, taken from somewhere up on a balcony. Most of the people in the frame were doing what people do at a corporate party, standing around with drinks, talking in groups. But off to one side, near the edge of the floor, were 2 figures in a slow dance. Megan was one of them. Vance was the other. She wasn't dancing with him the way employees dance with a CEO. She was leaning into him. I sat with the laptop open and looked at that picture for a long time. The cufflink in my pocket was his. The car had him in it last night. The navigation showed where they'd gone. But I'd never actually seen anything with my own eyes. I needed to see it for myself. In the evenings after work, I started driving over to the Panorama Towers. I'd park across the street with a view of the entrance and sit there for an hour or 2 and watch. The first couple of times I didn't see anything. People going in and out, residents coming home from work, delivery drivers. Then one evening I saw Vance walk out alone, get into his car, and drive off. Another evening he came back with a woman I didn't recognize, younger than Megan, dark hair, expensive coat. They walked into the lobby together with his arm around her shoulders. I started thinking maybe this whole thing was something else. Maybe Megan really had just dropped him off after the party. Maybe I talked myself into a story that wasn't there. Then one evening around 8, I saw her Audi pull up to the curb. They both got out. He pulled her in by the waist and said something close to her ear, and she laughed out loud. I got my phone out and took a few photos through the windshield. They walked toward the entrance together, and the glass doors slid shut behind them. I sat in the truck with the phone in my hand. I had no more doubts. That night at home I sat down with the laptop and started pulling everything I could find on Vance Sterling. It didn't take long. He'd been CEO of Hartwell Hospitality for 9 years. Before that he was nobody special, a regional sales guy at a hotel chain in Atlanta. The thing that changed his life was marrying Caroline Hartwell, the only daughter of Charles Hartwell, the man who built the whole holding from one downtown hotel 40 years ago. Vance hadn't built anything. He'd married into it. The old man was still chairman of the board, 74 years old, semi-retired, but he kept an office at headquarters and came in 2 or 3 days a week. Everything I read about Charles Hartwell said the same thing. Old-school Tennessee businessman, family first, his word was his bond. He'd handed the keys to his son-in-law and trusted him to run it right. I sat with that for a while. Everything Vance had, the title, the salary, the shares, the apartment at the Panorama Towers, all of it sat on one thing: the old man's trust. I kept watching the building for another week, and I started to notice something. Vance came home with different women, not just Megan. 3, for different women in the space of a few evenings. One of them he took into a high-end boutique on the ground floor of the complex, came out with a bag, walked her into the restaurant next door. I took photos of all of it. It raised a question I couldn't ignore. Who was paying for all of it? I had everything I needed. A scandal at home wouldn't get me anywhere. Megan would deny, blame, and in a week she'd be back at her desk and Vance would still be running the company. The only person in the world who could take a real swing at him was Charles Hartwell. The man who'd given him everything could take it all back. I spent the rest of that week putting it together. The cufflink, the parking pass, the screenshots from the company's social media, Vance with the matching cufflink on his cuff, Megan leaning into him on the dance floor. The photos from the curb outside the Panorama Towers. The photos of him with the other women, the boutique, the restaurant. I printed everything and put it in a thick leather portfolio. On Friday evening, I called Charles Hartwell's office. His assistant picked up. I told her my name and said I needed a private meeting with Mr. Hartwell on a personal matter that couldn't wait. She put me on hold for a minute, then came back and offered me Monday morning, 8:30. I took it. The weekend I went on like nothing was happening. Megan was around the house, on her phone, making weekend plans she didn't tell me about. We had dinner Saturday and Sunday. I didn't say a word. Monday morning I got up before her. I put on a suit, picked up the leather portfolio from the dresser, and walked out to the truck before she was awake. The folder on the passenger seat next to me had everything in it. I started the engine and drove downtown. Hartwell headquarters was a glass tower downtown. I parked in the visitor lot, took the elevator to the top floor, and gave my name to the receptionist at the executive suite. She walked me down a long hallway to a corner office with a heavy wooden door. Charles Hartwell stood up from behind his desk when I came in. Tall, white hair, firm handshake. He gestured at the chair across from him and sat back down. My assistant said this was personal. I set the leather portfolio on his desk. My name is Tom Bishop. My wife, Megan Bishop, is the VP of Strategic Marketing at your company. She reports directly to your son-in-law. He nodded slowly. For the last few months, your son-in-law has been having an affair with my wife. I have photos of them together at his apartment at the Panorama Towers. I opened the portfolio and turned it to face him. He looked down at the photos. He went through them slowly, one by one, without saying a word. There's more, I said. He's not just with my wife. There are at least 3 other women he brings to that building. He takes them shopping at the boutique on the ground floor. He takes them to dinner at the restaurant next door. Charles closed the portfolio. He didn't speak for a long moment. He just sat there looking down at the leather cover. Then he picked up the phone on his desk and pressed one button. Get security up here and get legal in my office within the hour. I want a full audit opened on Vance Sterling's expenses, effective immediately, and freeze his corporate access pending review. He hung up and looked at me. You did the right thing coming here. I stood up, nodded, and walked out. From Hartwell headquarters, I drove straight to Megan's office. I gave my name at the front desk and said I needed to see my wife. The receptionist called up, and a minute later Megan came out to meet me in the lobby. Tom, what are you doing here? We need to talk. Privately. She walked me back to her office and closed the door behind us. I sat down in the chair across from her desk. She stayed standing for a second, then sat down too, watching my face. I reached into my jacket pocket and put the cufflink on the desk between us. I found this in your car, the morning after the anniversary party. She looked at it. Her face didn't change, but her hand on the desk went very still. It's Vance's, she said. He needed a ride home from the restaurant. I drove him. It must have fallen off in the car. I took the parking pass out of my pocket and put it next to the cufflink. Guest of apartment 352, 2:15 in the morning. She closed her eyes for a second. He was drunk. I helped him up to the door. That's all. I opened my phone and turned it to face her. The first photo was her and Vance on the sidewalk outside the Panorama Towers, his hand on her waist, her laughing out loud. I swiped to the next one, and the next. She stared at the screen. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. I watched her work it out in real time, that she hadn't been the only one. I was at Charles Hartwell's office this morning. He is everything. He's already started the audit. The color went out of her face. She put one hand on the edge of the desk like she needed it to stay upright. I stood up. She didn't move. She was still sitting there, one hand on the desk, staring at the phone screen. I walked out and closed the door behind me. Megan came home that same evening. We didn't speak again. Later, from one of her former co-workers, I learned that after the internal review, she had been let go from the holding by mutual agreement. Her former boss had blocked her number, accusing her that because of her and me, he had lost everything. The internal audit at Hartwell turned up regular large expenses run through the corporate account. Charles Hartwell, the head of the holding, fired his son-in-law in disgrace, stripped him of his shares, and took back the apartment at the Panorama Towers, which had been bought with company funds. At the same time, his wife, Caroline Hartwell, filed for divorce and took everything he had left. As far as Hartwell Hospitality was concerned, Vance Sterling was gone. When the divorce papers came through, Megan hired a lawyer. What followed was 3 months of grinding negotiations. She fought every line. She tried to claim half the house. She asked for spousal support. Every week there was a new round of back and forth, new demands, new conditions. I let it run its course without saying much. I had time, and she had nothing left to bargain with. In the end, we signed a settlement. The house stayed with me in full. She took her car and walked away with a small fixed payout from our joint account. I never saw her again. A month or so later, I heard through a mutual acquaintance that she'd left Nashville and gone back to stay with her family out of state. I didn't hear anything direct about Vance. A short item showed up in the business press a couple of months later. Hartwell Hospitality had brought in a new chief executive, and Vance Sterling had left the company to pursue other interests. That was the last I saw of his